No fewer than 9,000 civil servants who sat the 2022 Federal Civil Service Promotion Examinations failed. Now, this is according to a list obtained from the Federal Civil Service Commission. No fewer than 13,000 civil servants sat the 2020 examination, which held in about 69 computer-based test centers. The candidates were drawn from the core civil service, the Nigerian police, the other paramilitary and specialized agencies. In a list attached to the letter, it was noted that only 3,851 civil servants out of the over 13,000 civil servants who sat the promotional examination passed. Now, a total of 191 were promoted to the post of Assistant Chief Administrative Officer from the role of Principal Administrative Officer. A total of 313 civil servants were promoted from the role of Senior Administrative Officer to Principal Administrative Officer. A total of 191 were promoted to Senior Administrative Officer from the role of Administrative Officer 1, among others. Now, joining us on the news is Oludare Akinlaja, Managing Partner, OAR&D Company, to discuss this. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me on the news.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so according to the figures that we are actually looking at,
yes,
at about almost 80% of civil servants failed the examination.
Yes.
Now, what would you say is responsible for this appalling result?
So many things might have caused that. I remember many years ago, we were in the middle of certain conversations with civil service, and one of the challenges was we moved from paper-based writing and started to use the CBT. So first of all was the adoption of the technology. A lot of people found it difficult to adopt the technology to be able to write their exams. That's an issue. The second issue could probably have just been interest, okay? You know, there's this there's this silent thing, you know, it's not our father's work, it's just civil service, you know, and there's really no passion or desire to want to be maybe educated or more knowledgeable.
See it as a piece of the national cake.
They just see it as a step they need to pass. It's not necessarily, they don't see it as a lifelong learning issue, something that can make them better people or better serve where they are. Just see it as it's one more hurdle to pass. Okay.
All right, so but why do you think, you know, they have this particular disposition about the civil service in the first place? Because there have been reports of, you know, civil servants being like a bicycle, you know, when it comes to work, not doing anything to even, you know, further themselves in their workplaces. Yeah.
Well, it's a psychology thing, okay? You know, I know how many people probably must have served or did their NYC in public sector as young people, and we saw lackadaisical attitudes. They got to come to work late, leave early.
I was one of them.
You know, and do all that stuff. But the truth is, there's actually progress. I think what's now happening is that maybe more young people are now trying to get into civil service. But of course, there's that frustration. There are people among the civil servants who maybe bring some private sector sense into it, but are frustrated also by the psychology of the environment. It's laid back. Who really owns it? Who is responsible for the growth within that system? So I think it's a psychological thing where we have all perceived that civil service is, if you didn't find a job in private sector, you want to be able to do something and do something else, go and work for civil service.
Okay, so now, if 4 out of, 5 federal civil servants failed this particular exam, can we say that they are well suited for their jobs in the first place? And does this not suggest, the inefficiency in the system?
Well, so that question will start from the recruitment process. So how were people recruited in the first place to get into the civil service? What's the criteria for recruitment? Okay, if you cannot answer the criteria for recruitment, then we're not really trying to solve the problem from the beginning. So the truth is, we all understand the way recruitment sometimes is done in civil service. Maybe quota system, maybe you know somebody who is there, so you are recommended for a particular job and all that stuff. So the recruitment process is really not, there's really no standards to it. So when you now get people into the system, you then want to do a promotional exam, then find out, oh, we have a bunch of people who are in the system who can't even progress because the recruitment into the system was either faulty or not properly checked. Then we're trying to solve the problem halfway that we should have solved right from the beginning.
Well, according to reports and what a lot of people actually are saying on the streets when it comes to civil service, they believe that, like you said earlier, it's a piece of their national cake. So whether they do the work or not, they still get paid at the end of the day. But I think the system is actually trying to change all that.
Of course.
Yes. But then there comes the talk of nepotism and how, the scandals and all that,
Yeah.
So, how do we make sure that the system is effective, despite, all the challenges being faced in the civil service?
First of all, it's change management. Second of all, it's a psychological thing. And to solve a psychological or a behavioral problem, we have to adjust the structure. I'm a consultant, so if I come to your business, for instance, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, how do you operate? What's your mode of operation? The civil service and its mode of operation, we have 36 states, for instance, and it's one federal civil service. Now, you have to make sure that representatives from 36 states are working in the civil service. What's the criteria to weed out? How do you determine how many work or how many don't work? So we are too top-down heavy, and that's the discussion for another day, which is not today. Okay. The civil service is too top-down heavy, and this idea of looking for a way to compensate every sector of the country, whether they are knowledgeable in the area or not, they must have a job. You see, once you are faced with that kind of problem, you will have all manner of people in the system. And of course, for instance, if the director of recruitment or whoever is in power is from a particular segment of the country, the idea is, once you enter there, you find a lot of people from that segment of the country. So the idea is not on competence, it's not on how knowledgeable you are, it's based on how do we pacify this multidimensional atmosphere we have in our country.
All right, so talking about, competence and being knowledgeable. Yeah. Now, 80% failing is quite terrible, if, I must actually say.
Yes.
But how do you think this would affect the morale of those 80%? who have, sadly not been promoted?
Well, the truth is some of them might feel bad about it. Some of them might have legitimate reasons for failing. Maybe they not being able to adopt technology as a means of writing exams, because we even have young people who are faced with challenges even writing CBTs, with CBT computer-based testings and fail. Okay, some other people might not really care. They just wanted to do it to pass. And someone say, do that exam because I can't recommend it if you have not. I can't recommend you if you have not done that exam. So you're going to have a mixture of responses to this, but you will have a cross of people who will feel bad, not necessarily because they have failed, but because they will not be promoted and get salary increase. They will not be promoted and have a pathway to grow in the civil service. So that would be, in fact, majority of them, that would be the reason that they cannot get promoted, they cannot grow in the civil service, and maybe they will not be able to earn more or do more in the civil service. That basically would be a reason why a lot of them will feel bad, not because they failed in that sense.
Well, hopefully they actually do better next time. But then what would you say is the implication of this sort of result on specialized agencies across Nigeria?
So this is a reflection of, so when we use specialized agencies, you're talking about agencies that need maybe engineering competencies, people that need some sense of, the truth is, if you go into civil service, I must say, there are some very brilliant minds in the civil service. You can't take that out of the civil service, but you will of course have people like this. And what this shows is, imagine if that 80% that failed have to do sensitive research, for instance, or have to carry out, we just spoke about energy, for instance, I'm working for energy, or, so it makes me kind of, or makes us kind of uncomfortable that who are the people, or who are the crop of people that are saddled with the responsibility of driving policies, of making government more efficient, and driving our systems as a people. So if we don't check that, how do we get people who are competent, who are knowledgeable, and who can pass a basic promotional exam?
All right, so quite an interesting conversation we've had. Thank you so much, Oludare Akinlaja, for joining me on the news to discuss this.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.